I'm very excited. If you've been around Riverside for a long time, you'll know our moderator this evening needs almost no introduction. But for those of you who are maybe new to Riverside, I want to introduce you to Dan Bernstein, a hero of mine. For 32 years, Dan Bernstein was the voice at the Press Enterprise, the columnist. Many of us grew up or lived our lives reading over morning coffee every morning. He knows the city, he knows how to ask the question behind the question, and he's agreed to steer us through the evening. I think this maybe will be one of the high notes in his career, at least since 1985 when he won Best Local News Columnist. I only put that up there because that's when I was 3 years old, and I'm just like, I didn't even know they gave out awards back then in the 80s. So we're really excited and honored that Dan is here. Would you please join me in welcoming Dan to be our moderator?
Good evening. Thank you very much, Justin. That award was a stone tablet. They didn't have I still have it. It's a pleasure to be here. This is the third of three forums that we've had, 2, 4, and now 6. And I have to commend Justin for being very thorough in his preparing me and for this evening. And I think he is grateful for you all for preparing him. As he said, that what we're about to speak and talk about tonight is really a product of your concerns in Ward 6. What you think is important. A lot of these questions are informed not only for the city, but Ward specific. So sit back and enjoy it. I think that it should be a very interesting, stimulating evening that will help you make your decision and about a month. Without any further delay, I'd like to bring forth the candidates. First of all, Mr. Hernandez. And also, Sir Oz Puerta. So as this be a microphone, we'd be in business. So the gentlemen are going to be sharing a microphone. And as Justin said, the first part is kind of a open-ended discussion. 5 topics, 8 minutes each maximum, but we'll just see how things go. And we're just kind of looking for philosophy, kind of not necessarily 5-point program or anything like that, but just how the gentlemen approach certain issues that you all and others in the city are thinking are important and should be addressed in this campaign. So we'll go to discussion. And the very first issue is an issue that across the board in all 3 wards was kind of the top of mind, and that is homelessness. Riverside has spent tens of millions of dollars over the past several years trying to address homelessness. Some efforts have moved people into housing, but others have drawn sharp criticism. The city's own count shows that homelessness is up more than 50% since 2022. And this is the reality that one of these candidates will hear on day 1. So the question is, what is your philosophy on this issue? Not your plan, your 5-point program, but what is your philosophy about homelessness? What is the city's most basic, fundamental obligation to someone living on the street? And where does that obligation end? And assuming that the obligation is met, what do Riverside residents deserve in return?
So, full transparency, he asked us if we made it a good fight. He'll give us extra sandwiches on the way out. But really though, when it comes to homelessness, it's important for people to understand that these are human beings on the street. Just recently, I was walking around a neighborhood and ran into a gentleman who I knew from LA Fitness, who was homeless, and, you know, was trying to talk to him to try and help him get services. And while I was talking to him, a lady came looking for her son, and it really affected me, and it hurts when people talk about homelessness and unhoused individuals as if they're just numbers for people to be pushed around to different areas. My philosophy when it comes to homelessness is that the opposite of homelessness is being housed. 4 walls and a roof. Doesn't matter which shape, form it takes. If we want individuals off the street, they have to go somewhere. Pushing them along to other areas is part of what's gotten us where we are today, as far as, you know, just them moving around to different areas, because they're not going to disappear into thin air. We have to come up with real long-term solutions to address the homelessness crisis that's going on in our city and only getting worse. As is when it comes to homelessness, the increased population of homelessness is unfortunately seniors. That's starting to happen. And we're gonna have a lot more individuals on the street who are of senior citizen age. And that's unacceptable. And I think no matter who gets elected, no matter who's on city council, the city really needs to make some effort to address this issue with understanding, empathy, and the fact that these are human beings. And many of them, aside from those individuals who are struggling with severe mental health, want help to get off the street.
Well, let's stand up for this, right? All right, hello everyone. My philosophy is pretty simple. The reason we haven't really dented the homeless problem is because it requires more than one entity to come together to work on a solution. It requires the city, it requires the county, and it requires the state. You know, in Ward 6, we have an influx of county services. The state has legislation that defines what the meaning of grave danger is, which can mandate services on individuals with either addiction problems or mental health issues. I completely agree, compassion first, but I don't think compassion should allow for chaos. I don't think we need to let things get to that point where it's impacting our neighborhoods, where it's impacting our residents. I think we need to do a couple things. At a local level, the best way to deal with homelessness is prevention. We set up the right environment for people to succeed so they don't have these problems, so they don't have these issues. At a county level, we partner up with our county and we make sure that we address how much services are put and where they are located at. So that way we can make sure that each city, the obligation for each city is to take care of its residents, not necessarily for Riverside to bear the brunt of the entire county. And then finally, for the individuals who refuse services and we cannot mandate services on them, I do believe in stronger policing. I believe in enforcing our anti-camping ordinances, and I feel that we give people every opportunity to get off the street, but we help those who want to help themselves. Until laws change, until we can mandate services, we have to move forward. I don't think that compassion should come at your expense.
Can we drill down a little bit on this? The concept of prevention. What goes into prevention? What sort of, for both of you?
So when it comes to prevention, is a big key to this, to not increase the number of homelessness that are on the street is affordable housing. We currently have no affordable housing plans here in Ward 6, and the city is focused on market rate housing. You know, me and my wife, we pay over $3,000 a month rent. That's more than most people paid for their mortgage who bought a home before 2020. That's ridiculous. There's no wonder that there's homeless people on the street. If you're making minimum wage, I don't know how people survive. A big chunk of prevention is making sure that we have affordable housing for every individual at every level when it comes to their income. So, for example, the Cypress Springs Apartments over here on Cypress and Van Buren, that those apartments go off of individuals' income. And it's been incredibly successful in helping people maintain their household, their head, save up. Those are the types of things that we need to focus on to try and prevent more homelessness. When it comes to money that's already been spent, oftentimes it's fruitless because it's short-term plans that only help individuals for a short amount of time. Again, we need to think long-term, and we need to develop plans that are in place long after we get elected and someone else takes our place.
As far as prevention goes, I'm under the philosophy that no one's gonna come save you, you're gonna have to put in the work yourself. So I feel that there are two components to this. One of them is housing, to make sure that we meet the RENA mandate, 18,000 units by 2029, and we have to take a balanced approach on affordability and market rate. Because if we take a balanced approach on housing, we can make sure that we set up the right environment so that the business community thrives, so that our sales tax revenues increases, and we can provide more of these core services without raising taxes. The other portion on prevention is education, in my opinion. When we talk about fixed incomes, individuals with fixed incomes, financial classes have just started being mandated in California. I believe by graduates graduating in 2030 are gonna have to take financial literacy classes. We cannot depend on pensions, retirement programs solely. We need to do our education, make sure we plan for the future. We plan for the future 20, 40 years ahead of time. I think that right now we've done a good job at addressing youth homelessness with prevention. I believe the mayor just said at the state of the city that we're net zero on youth homelessness. But it comes with education and housing. Those are the two biggest components at a local level.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the second topic, which is budget and fiscal priorities. Riverside's Measure Z sales tax revenue has declined for 2 consecutive years. The city says the general fund is under pressure, and the city staff has recommended tens of millions of dollars in cost reductions or cuts during the next 2 years. You've been elected to the city council, you get the budget, and sure enough, there's not enough money to pay for everything the city needs. What do you protect, and what do you cut and eliminate, and how do you make those decisions?
So, obviously the qualities of any good leader is to try and find alternatives, other than trying to cut services or eliminate jobs. That's key to this, obviously bringing in good paying jobs, to bring in more revenue, to bring in more affordable housing. The reality is that the more expensive housing gets, the less money people have in their pockets to spend on local businesses. And that's just a fact. That's a reality. And if we focus on a lot of those different options, we can bring in more revenue. But if it comes to having to make budget cuts, obviously having to cut, vital services or vital jobs, everyone at the city works extremely hard. I know from being on the Board of Ethics, I watch how hard these individuals work. So making sure that we take a look at maybe services that aren't as vital or necessary, but help us keep as many vital city services and employees as possible is key to making sure that we stay successful and we keep control.
For a city budget, I think we need to focus on a couple things. First, we need to make sure that all core services that a city needs to provide to its residents are upheld. Public safety, infrastructure, the essentials. Once we use up all that money, we figure out where that's going, then we focus on other external services. We just talked about homelessness. There's a lot of money that the city spent on homelessness. Are we addressing the problem? Is it getting worse? Do we need to keep spending money on certain things? We need to reassess programs, activities, any sort of movement that isn't necessarily getting us results, or it's getting us results at too high of a price. If we focus on the core services, the essentials, we can make make sure that we are proactive so we don't have to bring up Measure Z right now for a core service like the fire department. 84 new firefighters, 2 new fire stations. Why are we being forced to react right now? Why wasn't this need anticipated years ago as we saw the calls for service going up, as we saw the population rising? Why did no one think ahead so that way we can plan better so we don't overburden our residents with more taxes?
I don't think that cutting the money that we spend for homelessness is gonna really help our situation any at all. But taking a look at how that money is spent and reconsidering how it would be better served and actually helping people off the street is vital. That's only gonna put us in a worse situation. When it comes to Measure Z funds, obviously it's been declining. Running a city is expensive, and it's difficult to always determine what the needs are in the future. Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody can tell what the future is going to hold. But what we can do is we can make sure that our city and our frontliners have the resources that they need to be able to protect and serve, or to keep us from a situation, for example, like Los Angeles. If we don't take steps to make sure that our firefighters have the services and the resources that they need, we're gonna be in a lot of trouble in the future.
So here's where I disagree. I do think we do see these problems coming up ahead. We do see these problems coming up. There was a fire report that told us we needed 84 new firefighters and 2 new fire stations. What's the problem? The problem is that report came out now and it's an emergency. What needs to be done is these reports, these studies, all these trends need to be analyzed earlier. We need to see the state of the city, the state of the county, the state of the state, and adjust accordingly. We do know when we need to fix buildings. We do know when we need to defer maintenance. We do know when we need to buy new equipment, when we need to hire new people. We know those things are coming up. We just need to do a better job of being organized so we handle these situations faster and they don't cost you more in taxpayer dollars.
I'd like to get into this a little bit deeper. We have Measure Z. When it was passed in 2016, the estimate was it would bring in about $50 million a year, about $50 million a year in sales tax revenue. It has brought in about $80 million a year instead. And yet we find ourselves in this situation of low staffing in an obviously very critical area. As a council person, seeing this happen, what does this tell you about how the city is run? And what would you, should this have been foreseen, or what would you do differently?
So it's easy to stand up here and say what we would do and that we could tell the future, but if that were the reality, all of the council members that Mr. Puerta is endorsed by should have seen this coming, right? By his comments. So the reality is that, again, it's difficult to run a city. And to put this, just to say, well, I would do this, I would do that, that's easier said than done when it comes to city services, public safety. Obviously, maintaining those services means having to make sure that our public employees have a paycheck. So if we really start to nitpick and make, oh well, the Measure Z that's they're trying to pass is 25 cents to every $100. The reality is that we're the ones that are gonna suffer in the future when we cannot provide those services and when our police officers and firefighters are underfunded.
So I'll say this about government in general. I feel that government doesn't have a money problem, we have a money management problem. We spend money faster than we get it. That's why I'm running. I'm tired of the fiscal responsibility. I know that if we are proactive, if we take the extra steps, if we start doing our homework now, we can make sure that we accommodate smart growth, we can accommodate the after effects of this housing mandate, because we're gonna have 18,000 new units by 2029. We need to start thinking now, we need to start thinking ahead in 5-year terms, 10-year terms, 20-year terms. That's how we get these issues addressed. Because unless I'm wrong, fire is a dire need. It's essential, there's no compromise on it, and we're out of money, which is why we need to put this measure on the ballot. That's unacceptable. There shouldn't be a situation where we are reactive like that. We can do our homework ahead of time and at least have an idea of where the city is heading towards and anticipate those needs so we can do them cost effectively.
All right, we'll move on to number 3. Topic 3, housing and neighborhood character. The state is pushing cities to build more housing. Not just affordable housing, but housing in general, homes and apartments. The Riverside has issued permits for less than 20% of the units the state says it needs. Yet residents across the city worry about what growth is doing to their neighborhoods. More density, more traffic, more corporate-owned rentals, and less of what made them choose to live here in the first place. So the question is, how do you strike a balance between these two interests? Where can housing be added, particularly in your ward, and which neighborhoods would be most severely and unfairly disrupted with new residential construction?
So I believe there's a balanced approach to housing. There's just as much a need for market rate housing as there is for affordable housing, and I'll tell you why. Simple as businesses don't come here out of compassion. What they do is they do their homework, they make sure that they are sustainable, that they put themselves in the right environment. And what that happens when we have a vibrant business community, it means we have more taxpayer dollars to spend on things like new firefighters, new fire stations. So the market rate and affordability, affordable housing needs to have a balanced approach. Next, where are we gonna build? We need to accommodate 18,000 units by 2029. So there are certain areas, word specifically, I mean, in Banbury Drive, there's a lot right there. I think it's destined for some housing units. I think it'd be a good spot. Building alongside our corridors, smart building, places where our infrastructure needs won't be overburdened, places where we don't establish different elements of housing in established neighborhoods. There's space, there's room. We have it in Ward 6. We just have to be smart about it.
Well, I guess I should stand up too. So, when we talk about the future and when it comes to these mandates, obviously I disagree with the mandates. I do want more housing, but I don't think the state should come down and tell cities how much and where and how. If we don't start to build some of this housing, obviously that's the situation that we could put ourselves in. We've already tried a balanced approach, and it's not working. When it comes to what's going on with the economy, what's going on with our residents, this is what happens is working families are often the backbone of a community, and then costs rise, the price of housing rise, and then they get pushed out. I want to prevent that from happening, and we need to focus on more affordable housing for all individuals here, our working families, individuals, seniors, individuals who are unhoused, who are living out of their vehicles. If we don't take focus and make sure that we focus on more affordable housing rather than like market rate and above, there's already a complex over here on Tyler that's gone unfinished. So what's going to happen when we focus more on continuing more market rate housing and apartment complexes that people can't afford? There needs to be a lot of forethought and planning put into this before we just, let's make it all mixed and hope it works out. We need to focus on trends and what's going on with our city at the moment. And if our council and those who are elected can't realize that a lot of our residents are struggling right now, I don't know what to tell you. This is why it's important to take note of what the individual is running on and what their focus is.
I'd like to, along this line, when I came to Riverside 50 years ago, I rented a house in the Wood Street for $300 a month.
So what you're saying is we need a time machine?
And my wife and I always assumed that we would own a house someday, and sure enough, we bought a house. And sitting here and listening to your backstory, that you and your wife are paying $3,000 a month to rent, what does this say about the American dream of home ownership? How does reality intersect with what your dreams are, I guess, in terms of housing?
You have to be asleep to believe it.
I'm starting to feel like I'm on a talk show. So, unfortunately, it is becoming just a dream. It's, when owning a home costs more than what two combined salaries can bring in, there's no amount of financial teaching and financial responsibility that can get you that home. It's the reality is that things are so expensive that it's making it incredibly difficult for so many of our residents to even think about buying a home. When I go talking to residents, even the homeowners I have 20 and 30-year-olds who can't afford to move out. They want to live their best lives. They already brought up their kids. They can't. And that's the reality that we're dealing with on top of the rising cost of food, gas, services, products. It's just starting to get overwhelming for a lot of our residents who make, even 5 years ago, what would have been considered a decent income. That's just not a reality anymore.
So I think reality is what you make of it. Life is hard. No one said it was going to be easy. I'm a first generation citizen. My family struggled a lot. My parents worked every day and night to make sure that we didn't have anything missing. And we still lost our home in 2008. We still lived in a van. We had to rely on our neighbors to take showers. We've seen that. But I'm here before you today. I'm running for city council. I'm the executive director of the Arlington Business District. I looked for opportunities when they didn't come to my door. I think at a council level, we work on creating more of those opportunities. We set up the right environment. We bring in the right industries. We set up the right businesses. We make sure we build the right type of housing. I'm not gonna talk about what my housing payments are every month, but I'm an investor. I have real estate. I did it all by myself. I didn't wait for someone to come and save me. I think that life is hard. Of course life is hard, but I think that there are opportunities here. Just like the Riverside Auto Center, they told me they're struggling to hire technicians at $70 an hour. Jobs are here, opportunities are here. We need to make sure that we align our youth with opportunities that are available and bring in more opportunities based on what our college students are studying right now.
Let's move on to topic 4. Had a good transition here. There probably isn't a single candidate in these council races who doesn't want to bring good jobs and better business to Riverside. What kinds of jobs and businesses does the city need, especially in your ward? What kind of jobs and businesses do we need most? And what does a council member actually do to attract these jobs and businesses?
When it comes to attracting jobs for the city and our ward overall, it's important to look at the trends and what's going on nationally and locally. There was a point in time in history where warehouses meant jobs. That's not true anymore. The reality is that artificial intelligence, automation are taking over a lot of jobs. And it's going to be difficult for anybody in office to determine what the future holds. But we can look at reliable sources when it comes to what helps keep most people employed. And usually that's in the industries of technology, medical field. Looking forward to the future is environmental jobs that have to do with producing technology revolving around the environment and how to improve our situation when it comes to overall quality of life. we have a lot of individuals who are senior citizens, who are getting older. Obviously, instead of being on the street, there are, facilities that where they can be taken care of. So there's a lot of different opportunities that we can look into to make sure that our residents have, good paying opportunities. Obviously, partnering with unions and, trying to create, apprenticeship programs, where you don't have to have a college degree to find a good job, at least a decent paying job where you can, you don't have to own a few homes, but, you can at least, survive, pay for food, have a vehicle. Those things shouldn't be out of reach for anyone who works. And it's disappointing to hear someone blame the victims when it comes to unaffordability and how difficult it is. If everyone wanted to be the CEO of a company, there wouldn't be any. There's all kinds of people who provide services, and without those individuals, you wouldn't get your food at a fast food joint, at a local restaurant. Wherever it is, people work hard, and they deserve to be able to at least have a place to live, food on the table, and be able to pay their bills.
So on the topic of jobs, I just mentioned the Riverside Auto Center told us that they were struggling to hire technicians $70 an hour. Right now what I'm doing is I'm meeting with the skilled trades to try to see where those opportunities are. I'm meeting with other city departments. We found out that there's an EMS program in Chula Vista and Anaheim where the cities took it upon themselves to fill in their in-house needs on EMS services and provided a pathway to careers for high school students. Yeah. That's a great thing. Jim Perry has focused a lot of his time and focus on career and technical education. We need more of that. Right now, we need a lot more people to fill in the skilled trades position. We also need to grow on what's recession-proof. Healthcare is recession-proof. We need more of it. Kaiser's expanding, they're adding more beds, and hopefully we'll have some new housing projects that can accommodate the new staffing that's gonna be there so people can live local, work local, stay local. As far as what a council member can do is we can facilitate things like apprenticeship programs through the chamber, through the universities. I know that, again, bringing up the auto center, they're trying to work with one of the universities to bring in a work experience and internship program so they can meet those needs, the hiring needs. We just need to work with the groups around us, with the big players, and figure out what jobs they can't fill and educate our students to understand that those pathways are available.
All right, we'll move on to the last of our round table, or round couch, or oblong couch. 2 weeks ago, roughly, Riverside City Manager Mike Futrell announced he was leaving for Pasadena. And about a week ago, he announced that, no, he's staying here. The whiplash is the news, and it's hard to know exactly what happened, who had the change of heart, whether it was the city manager, whether it was the Pasadena City Council, whether it was both of them. But the fact is that Riverside is still kind of trying to deal with the latest city manager drama. The city has had 5 permanent city managers since 2005, with an average tenure of 4 years, which is roughly half the national average and slightly less the state average. Until last weekend, Mr. Futrell would have been the 3rd consecutive Riverside city manager to leave for the same position in another city. So where does this leave Riverside? First of all, do you believe that you support Mr. Futrell's decision to retain his job here? And second, what do you look for in a city manager?
So as far as, whether Pasadena chose not to pursue it or if Futrell chose, I don't know. I'm not gonna assume that. I'm sure that if I do get elected into position, there is going to be more conversations to be had about what those background details were. But I'll tell you what I do know. I work for the business district, which means I have monthly meetings with city council, mayor's office, city manager's office, and I've seen Petro up close in person and what he does. He does good work. We have good momentum right now. I wanna focus on maintaining that momentum, making sure that we give smart projects and new businesses every reason to come to the city. I wanna look for a city manager that has a strong financial background, a city manager that has a strong background in experience in development, and I wanna make sure that they have the ability to make a deal and make things happen. I'm all about being hands-on, and I think that Patrol's doing a great job at that. If there are circumstances that might change that opinion, I don't know yet. I won't know unless I get that seat.
I know everybody loves cheese, man, but we should always wait to hold our judgment until we find out what really happened, right? Me personally, I like Mike Charles. I think he does a great job. I've heard him talk about how important it is for us to bring in more affordable housing, and that we're not gonna rest our way out of this homelessness issue. So, I really like a lot of the work that he's done. I think that as a candidate, as a council member, like any other job, it's important to find out why that position is a revolving door and address that. What is causing us to have city managers in a pattern leave after so many years? What's going on? Why are they leaving? And how can we address that to keep a city manager like Mike? It's so important that we do a deep dive and look into the cause, not just why they're leaving on the surface level, but what's going on. Have these conversations with any individuals you would at any level of employment. If they were important to you, we would figure out why are you leaving. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. What's the cause? And let's keep. And even if it's not Mike and it's another person, what was the cause so that we don't have that happen in the future?
Okay, well, I think we have concluded the first round. And what do you think of that format? I think that's I think it's a good too, and I commend Jason and Justin and his committee for thinking this through, thinking how they could be a little bit different. And I think that the gentleman gave some really thoughtful answers, and I hope that they resonated with you and helped you make a decision in a month or so. Now we're gonna go to the rapid response, I think it's called. Let's see, gotta make sure I do this right. All right. So we have kind of global questions about the city and then ward specific, and I'm gonna kind of try to tailor them to what the discussion has been so far. I'll throw one out that hasn't been talked about before, but I think it's kind of an interesting topic, and that is the Inspector General, the phantom Inspector General that we've been waiting for many, many moons now. The city is evidently recruiting its first ever Inspector General. What do you think is the first thing? You both have some insights to how the city works. What would you recommend that be the first thing that this Inspector General investigates? And also, even though it's cut and dried right now, do you think this position should be elected rather than appointed?
Yes.
So, again, we're bringing up the topic of Measure Z and the tax revenue that it will or will not bring in. I think the Inspector General should focus on the first portion of Measure Z that passed, where that extra money came into play, and look into how we spent that money and how it was
Sorry.
yeah, so how those decisions were made. So that way we don't make that mistake again. If we're talking about putting a new tax increase measure on the ballot and we're gonna go through this again, What's gonna happen when those numbers don't match up? Let's say we have a surplus, where is that money going? I think that's the first thing that we need to address, so that way we make sure that we don't fall under bad habits again. And the second part about being appointed or elected, that's a tricky one, because elected, you get the person that's essentially the hometown hero, the person that the public likes, but are they necessarily the most experienced person to find situations where there was money mismanaged? Are they the most experienced, or are they the right person for the job? They both have an incentive. If you have an elected position that's gonna get paid, or an appointed position that's gonna have a salary, they're both gonna have financial incentives. So I'm not too picky on either format, I just wanna make sure we have the right person for the job.
Let me start by saying I would have loved to have it be an elected position, but you take what you can get, right? Unfortunately, it's appointed. Even people who are appointed to positions aren't necessarily the best fit. So I think that it would have benefited the city, the residents more if it were an elected position. But again, that's my opinion, right? What should the Inspector General focus on? When we go back to Measure L, fraud, waste, and abuse. So I think that if I'm elected, I would focus on working closely with the Inspector General to find out where there's fraud, waste, and abuse, to see where and if we can make budget cuts based on their findings.
Right. Measure Z, on the ballot again, raising the sales tax from 1% to 1.25%. The original Measure Z was supposed to expire in 2036. If this one passes, it would be an indefinite increase in the sales tax. The city says, as we talked before, most of the revenue would go to fill the understaffed fire department. The question is, do you support this measure? Yes or no, and why?
So I'll start off by saying that I have a personal history with the fire department. I support Measure Z. I don't think we compromise on public safety. Like I talked about before, it would have been nice if we could have been proactive and anticipated this problem ahead of time, but the fact remains that we can't afford for our service times to extend. We can't afford to not get a response from our fire department. It's a core service. We need to make sure that this is addressed. But what we can do is, moving forward, if we instill the right systems to make sure that we are proactive on the needs of our community and the needs of our ward, we can make sure that these problems are addressed ahead of time. I've never voted for a tax increase in my life. This is a unique situation for me, but the fire department has saved my dad's life more times than I can count. He's been sick for over 20 years. I won't compromise on public safety because I want to make sure that you get the same response that my dad got when his life was saved.
I'm confused, is that a yes or no? Okay, because at first it sounded like you were against Measure Z at the beginning of this, and now for it. So, when it comes to Measure Z, I'm gonna be honest, is I'm for it. The reality is that it's provided additional services, it's provided us the ability to bring on more individuals, to provide services to our residents in the city. If you drive around, you can see that there's, police cars that say paid for with Measure Z. There's a lot of money that comes from Measure Z to help provide our residents the services and quality of life that they need. I understand that people have questions as to why it wasn't spent, but again, it's easy to say that when you're on the outside looking in. It's harder to budget all of that when you're a city with so many residents that have so many needs. And again, it's only 25 cents to every $100. I don't think it's that big a deal when it comes to Measure Z. I think that we can, we should keep it indefinitely to help sustain our city and the growing needs of our city.
So both of you gentlemen are involved in the city, have some experience on boards, et cetera. This question is, if you have served on a city board or commission, what is the most difficult vote you took, and why did you vote that way?
All right. I've served on the Board of Ethics for a little over 2 years now, and there was, and this is all public knowledge, so I'm not telling you anything that, you know, that's not supposed to come out. You know, when there was a complaint against 4 city council members who, you know, were accused of violating some of the prohibited conduct. You know, obviously, I was appointed by Jim Perry, I think is a stand-up guy, but it's my job on the Board of Ethics to make sure that the residents have the opportunity to see what's really going on. So when we were presented with a whole bunch of evidence, the overwhelming vote was to move forward with a hearing to find out what was really going on. Doesn't matter how I personally feel about somebody, whether I like them, whether I think they're a stand-up guy, I am committed to the role that I was appointed to or possibly elected to.
Was it, can you kind of narrow down what kind of decision did you make that was tough on you?
So voting to move forward with the pre-hearing.
I see.
Even though, like, I had an inkling, you know, but again, I owe it to the residents to find out what's really going on in the truth. So, you know.
So I sit on the Parks and Recreation Commission. There's not really a lot of drama. It's parks make life better. There's not really a tough vote that needs to come out. Sometimes residents come out and want to be heard on an issue. We will table the issue and we'll make sure that there's enough community outreach before we move forward on it. But what has prepared me to sit up on the dais? I sit on 8 different boards and commissions. I've been doing this for over 15 years. I'm the Vice President of the Arlington Business Council. I'm your Chamber Ambassador of the Year. I have 2 food pantries that have board of directors. I run nonprofits for a living. I know what it's like to work with people where we have 1,000 different businesses in the business district, 1,000 different business owners, 1,000 different personalities. With boards and commission, I find it simple. We're all here to work together. We're all here for a common cause. We don't have to be best friends. We just have to get the work done.
Name one thing the current city council has gotten right and one thing it's gotten wrong.
So open-ended.
So I'll go first. Some of the things that I think our city council has gotten right is, you know, obviously being able to maintain the city services for the residents of Riverside, trying to attract, you know, some job opportunities and listening to the residents. And, you know, when it comes to, you know, projects and what's going on downtown, the revitalization, trying to bring in more job opportunities for our residents. I think that's something they've done right. I just like to see a little of that love over here. But, something I think that they struggled with is, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, is affordable housing. I think that when city council members are on the dais, when they live here in the city, there needs to be a look at what's going on with the residents. You need to hear the residents and see what they're struggling with. And that is one of the key things that we do struggle with. And I'm glad to hear that you come on board with a little bit of affordable housing.
So I'll talk about what city council has done right first. I think they've done right at addressing issues where they start. Banning kratom. We're banning a substance that's dangerous and that could have been bought by anyone off the street at your local smoke shop. Great idea. Copper wire ordinance. We're making it harder for people who keep stealing the copper wire that take off the streetlights that turn them off from recycling them and continuing this problem. You know how much money the city spends on maintenance, how much all these things add up in cost, and how much it impacts our quality of life to begin with. That's one thing I think our council has done right, is they've been trying to address the root cause of things and trying to identify what's the easiest pathway at a local level that you could stop problems and crime at its source. One thing I think the current council has gotten wrong is right now, I think that we need to make a step forward to move on the attorney general position. I think we need it now because right now we're talking about Measure Z, we're talking about transparency, we're talking about accountability, and we're talking about trust with the residents. It seems like this is a matter that's very important to the residents to make sure it's done right. I think the faster we move forward with it, I think the faster we can show whether or not the city's on the right track, and we can start moving forward.
When you're talking about the affordable housing, not getting that right, I know this is a different board, but pardon me, if you were, excuse me, if you were on the council, how would you have voted for that quality in project on University Avenue?
So, as I've made mention at every single forum, is I would have voted for it. Again, we go back to where, businesses and our residents don't want the unhoused on the street, but then they're not willing to put, not the residents, but the majority of council members are not willing to take money, $21 million that the state was giving us to provide 114 units for people who wanted to get off the street. This came with wraparound services, security. There was a whole presentation on this during that city council meeting. And they said no to that. So, I would have voted unanimously yes.
So in regards to Quality Inn, I've said this before, I would have voted no on the project. 114 units with, most of them designed to go with people with mental health issues or addiction problems, and 4 caseworkers to help 114.
Six.
Sorry, 6.
It was 4, reduced to 4.
It's Inspector General.
It was reduced to 4.
Yeah, sorry. So again, I didn't think that there was enough people to help out with that, with the cases that need to be done. I think that just because we're trying to solve a problem doesn't mean we do it at any expense, at any cost. When I talk to other developers, when I talk to other people who have knowledge on this project, my understanding was that this wasn't the most financially responsible project. Again, if you disagree with that, again, that is your prerogative. Well, as far as turning down money, this is all taxpayer dollars. Every dollar of it, whether it's federal, state, otherwise, my campaign is run on fiscal responsibility. So just because we have money somewhere doesn't mean that it's the right money to take for the right project. There's ways we can do affordable housing, but we have to make sure that we help people get to a path of stability. We make sure that we give people every opportunity to get back into society.
Or do nothing. Or giving housing.
All right, now we're gonna move to some of these board-specific questions, which are pretty interesting. And keep in mind, we're kind of on the clock here. We have about 10 questions, so be brief. Our residents described the Magnolia corridor between Van Buren and La Sierra as the stretch of Ward 6 they're most frustrated by. Encampments, open drug use, trash, vacant storefronts. Name one specific action you take in your first 6 months to begin cleaning it up.
So I'll tell you what I'll do. At a local level, I'll do what I'm already doing now. I have nonprofits that clean up the streets. I've been on national media for my humanitarian work. We pick up trash, we restripe parking lots, and we make sure that we clean up and we instill community pride. I sit on Keep Riverside Clean and Beautiful's board of directors. I want to bring more beautification projects locally, and I want to make sure that we work with our county officials, our state officials, to make sure that we build those relationships so we can address the issues that at a local level we can't address with homelessness.
Like $20 million?
What?
Like $20 million?
Go ahead.
So, if we make beautification efforts to the Magnolia corridor, obviously it's not gonna solve the whole situation that's going on there. We have to, what I would do is I would partner with, Riverside PD to go after those individuals who are preying on those who are struggling with substance abuse. There's people on the street who struggle with substance abuse, they're depressed, they're dealing with mental health issues. If we address those individuals that are providing those substances, we can start to make a dent in that area. Then I can work to bring in more affordable housing. Let's get rid of the room key project that just provides them vouchers for a couple of days, and bring in more permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, things that actually get these individuals off the street. Then we can actually start taking action to beautify the area and bringing in more, attract more businesses once they see the progress that it makes.
Other parts of Riverside have these clear identities. Downtown, Canyon Crest, the Greenbelt. What is the Ward 6 identity? And is it built out enough? What do you see as the identity, and how would you enhance it so that this people have maybe a pride in Ward 6 that they might not have now? Or is having an identity important at all?
I think currently Ward 6 is looking for its identity. I think there are a lot of issues for sure. There's also a lot of potential. When you look at the Galleria, we don't need to rebuild the mall of 1995. We need to focus on experiences, name brand retailers, dining, family activities. These are the things that we can build around and have the Galleria the focus of Ward 6. To start with, I want to create a reputation for Ward 6 so it's considered sort of an uptown and showcase that Riverside is more than just its downtown. And with that comes a vibrant business community.
I think the culture of Ward 6 is representative of the residents who live here. We're a mostly Latino population here in Ward 6, and you can see that by a lot of the restaurants, the shops, the individuals who live here in the area. But it's also a very mixed community, and that, I love that. I want to keep focusing on that, bring in events and, more events that focus on the culture that exists here. The overall mixed culture here in Ward 6, I think, is something that we should focus on to bring in more foot traffic for our local businesses.
Some Ward 6 residents who responded are asking for code enforcement on evenings and weekends, when complaints like illegal dumping, party noise, and weekend nuisance issues come in, but officers aren't on duty. What would you do to make sure that code enforcement can respond to these complaints?
So just like what we do when the city needs to address another need, right now for the police department, for example, the city designed that PSET team to deal with certain issues with mental health issues and whatnot. So all we have to do is designate a new team, a new force that can service as needed. Obviously, we do our homework to make sure what time these calls are being, any consistencies on trends, making sure that if it happens every Wednesday of the month at this time, we can be cost efficient at addressing these issues without necessarily having to hire an army of people to deal with them.
Put together a mob and start going after. So obviously when it comes to, the complaints of illegal dumping and noise and, things like that, obviously, I hear the complaints of the residents when I go knocking on doors, like, hey, I call the police, I call, to see what they can do. There's no answer, they don't come. And I know for a fact from the ride-alongs that the police are incredibly busy. Everything that's going on here in our area is going on throughout the city. So we need to make sure that we can provide more support for these individuals that that address these issues like illegal dumping, and make sure that they have the resources that they need so we can expand the times where they can address these issues.
The Riverside Transmission Reliability Project, construction is active right now and headed towards Orlanza. Directly behind the homes that were evacuated during the Mandalay fire last June. The route, the schedule, and the 4 miles underground split are pretty much locked up. What would you actually push for during the construction period to protect Ward 6? And what is your standard for whether the city has done its job in this area?
So when it comes to the above ground portion of the RTRP project, I've been very vocal that I'm against the above ground portion of it. Initially, this project was supposed to go through Ward 3. For some reason it didn't go through there anymore, right? Now it's going through here. Why is it that they can change that, but they can't find alternatives to make it underground or other alternatives? Why? Because they don't want to. I know there's the excuse, well, we can't find the money. It's convenient when you can find, when you want something really bad, you can find the money. I think the safety of our residents is something important enough for us to find money to protect the future of this area.
Yes.
How would you ride a herd on, whether they decide to bury the rest of it or not? How would you ride herd during this construction process to make sure that your ward is protected? What could the council
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of it.
Well, during the construction, there are certain things that could be done, I believe, by a city council member to make sure that things go smoothly, to protect the ward from maybe keeping things on schedule, environmental issues, etc. Like, in other words, make this construction program accountable so that the residents know that the work is being done correctly.
So obviously that comes from just making sure that, you know, we have oversight and making sure that things are staying on time, on task, things are staying within budget. You know, it's important that we make sure that all of that is going on. You know, we look at the environmental effects that project will have on that area, and that's one of the major reasons I'm against it as well, is, you know, as far as the construction, I know there's already things that it's already started, but, you know, as far as it's going right now, we need to make sure that they're following along with the plans that were already in place, and making sure that, you know, we have some oversight in place to make sure that things are going along with it.
So what I would push for with RTRP is I would push to make sure that your power stays on. The state mandate was done 20 years ago in 2006. Riverside is not the same Riverside today as it was 20 years ago. If we have the money to make this project fully underground, by all means, I don't think anyone is disagreeing with it. If we don't, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this project costs around $600 million, and it would be another 600 to get this fully underground. Again, if the money's there, I don't have a problem with it. I believe one of the council members at the other forum said the money was there. I don't understand why. If a standing council member says the money's there and nothing has been done about it, maybe the money is not there. I will say this, that the connection, the need for a second connection to the state grid has never been more important now than ever. I want to make sure that in the summer, when it gets hot and you turn on your AC, that it actually turns on. And as far as the standard for whether the city has done its job here, I think that there's been a lot of information going around. I think there's been a lot of community engagement. The problem was that this model, this method was designed years ago, and I can't speak for whether or not that right outreach was done to make sure that the needs of the community was heard when those decisions were made. I feel like we are forced to be reactive, and we're risking your reliability tax dollars. So we need to make sure that we do the smart decision, preferably what you guys prefer, but to make sure that you guys don't lose a core service like your electricity.
State law permits what cities can do about sidewalk vendors. No outright bans, capped fines, no criminal charges. But some of the respondents to the registrants complain that Riverside has too many unpermitted street vendors. Riverside already has a vending ordinance. Ward 6 residents see unpermitted vending every day. So what should the city be doing about it? And where do you draw the line between enforcing it and also allowing some economic opportunity for these vendors?
So obviously here in Ward 6, it being a majority Latino community, we see a lot of individuals, selling tacos and raspados and all of it, right? These are individuals who actually want to make money to start a business of their own, but they don't have the financial opportunity to do so. I think this, as council members, as a city, we can work together to provide programs, to be able to teach them the proper way to be able to grow business, to work with them, and even maybe provide places where they can set up. There's already places over there by Target where some of the food trucks will set up. Paris has done this in the past, where they have an area of vacant property where they just allow them to set up there. That way it's concentrated in one area and it doesn't bother the neighbors. We need to provide opportunities for these individuals who want to work, who want to create a business for themselves, just aren't in the financial position to do that by paying really expensive rent for a storefront.
I think this is an area where the city can easily lead with compassion first. We can address unpermitted vendors by showing them maybe a pamphlet, a guidebook, something that says, these are the steps you need to be compliant, to make sure that you're meeting the safety standards. Because when we're talking about vendors, if we use food, for example, there's always the safety risk, safety issue, making sure that your food is properly prepared. I think number two, if we continue to see the same people going that aren't permitted, that's when we need to enforce whatever policing policies we have, which means if we need to find them, we need to find them. We need to make sure that we are a thorn at the side of people who choose not to obey our rules. But we give them every opportunity to become compliant and to follow the rules, because I don't think anyone is against someone making a living, but we all abide by rules in the society. We all voted for rules. We may not agree with all of the rules, but we did come to a consensus with them.
The Galleria Tyler, or Tyler Mall, has lost Nordstrom and Forever 21, and the JCPenney property sale fell through. The mall's largest vacancy is over 150,000 square feet with no public plan to fill it. What should happen to the Galleria? And what is the council's role in making it happen? Basically, is retail dead in the Galleria? Can it be salvaged?
So I've spoken about this before, and the question is, why do people shop in person when they could buy something online? The answer is simple. It's for the experience. So when we talk about adding things like family dining, entertainment, and family activities, then we can revitalize something like the mall. What does a council's role take place in that? It's simple. On the business side, permitting and processing. If we streamline the process, we give more consistent answers, we'll have a reputation of being business friendly. So that way, these bigger businesses, like I said earlier, they don't come out of compassion. They do their math, they do their homework, they make sure that they are sustainable. And we need to make sure that we currently, I believe Riverside's ranked the 19th city, best city to start a small business in. That means we have 18 slots to do better. There's always room for improvement. And I think that if we start at City Hall, we start with consistent answering, we'll build that reputation that makes it easier to attract these businesses.
So the reason a lot of these stores have closed, there's a high-end furniture store in there that's in the process of closing, is again, we have to pay attention to what's going on nationally, locally. Obviously, the economy is having a huge impact on residents, right? Online shopping has put a dent in storefronts. So I think that City Council, I don't want to lose the Tyler Mall. It's been here ever since I've lived here. It's a landmark for the city. So I think council members should work together to try and keep it alive by making it maybe multi-purpose. Like maybe we can bring in art galleries, maybe we can bring in different things that that the title mall will bring in, a little bit of new life, right? Not just the same old stores, not just the same old restaurants, something a little different. That's usually what sparks people's interest. If the title mall is like, oh, I have something new, usually people wanna go check it out, right? So, just thinking outside the box, not just the regular retail and regular restaurant stuff, thinking different.
Well, we're down to our last minute. My gosh, that was fast. So here's the deal. Congratulations, you've been elected. Fast forward 4 years from now, and you're running for re-election. So tell your constituents what you've done, what you've accomplished over the last 4 years.
All right, so I'm elected. 4 years from now, I'm running for re-election. So, I aim to be as responsive to the residents as Jim Perry is. Whether people agree or disagree with Jim Perry, everyone agrees that he's always been responsive to their needs.
Yes.
He's always reached out to them, he's always come to them and, hey, what's the problem, what do you need? Whether it be one of his assistants, whether it be him himself in person, that's one of the things I aim to be. The other one is obviously bringing in more affordable housing. At that point, I've at least put a dent into the unhoused situation in our area. That's never gonna go away, and nobody's ever gonna fully solve that. But if we can make a difference and take some of those individuals or human beings off the street, that's something that I aim to accomplish. Obviously, keeping people off the street by bringing in more affordable housing. That is one of the main things that I aim to accomplish, along with, obviously, infrastructure, making sure that some of the streets that haven't been paved or redone in a while, get done. Areas with families that have children running around, that they have sidewalks, so those families don't have to worry about the kids getting run over, is important. So those are just some of the things I aim to accomplish in those 4 years.
So a couple things. I wanna do a couple things. I'm already a humanist. I clean up our streets. I wanna take that to the next level. I wanna instill community pride. I wanna take advantage of things like the city of Riverside has a clear volunteer list of people who want to help, people who wanna give back. I wanna make sure that those people are presented with every opportunity to get forward, because every time I come to a forum, every time I go to a group, I meet people with new organizations that I've never heard of before. There's a lot of good work being done in our city, and we need to take advantage of that. There's a lot of smart people in our city. I also want to work on making sure that Riverside meets its housing mandate, because we have a situation where Alberta has just voted to pink slip over 100 educators because of the anticipated lack of enrollment numbers. If we address housing, we can address to make sure that our teachers have a job. We make sure that we create the right opportunities by creating career and technical pathways for our students. We start at the high school level. We learn about what our college students are learning, so that way we can approach it in two ways. We can educate them on the jobs that are available here. I will talk about the opportunities that I will bring in from other industries based on what the students are already learning, things like advanced manufacturing, things that we've talked about before. But what I really want to do is make sure that we address all of these big issues: housing, quality jobs, a vibrant business economy, because I think that those are some core concepts that we can impact at a local level and get the most return on investment on with our time.
Well, those sounded like really good incumbent summaries, and it almost sounded like closing statements. But you have an opportunity to make another closing statement if you want for a minute. Otherwise, you can leave with what you just said. Whatever you want, what want you to do.
Well, first I want to say thank you to everyone for coming out tonight. Thank you to the Raincross Gazette for hosting this forum debate. And I also want to thank, I don't think he's here tonight, but Jim Perry for his 13 years of service. The one thing that I've heard from knocking on doors is Jim Perry's accessible, he hears people out, and me working with him for the last 8 years, I can tell you that's absolutely true. If he doesn't know the answer, he'll find someone else to get it to you. That's the level of service that this ward expects. That's the minimum level of service it needs moving forward. He has set that standard. We need to make sure that whoever sits on that dais for Ward 6 makes sure that Ward 6 gets the attention it deserves, because in my opinion, it's the most neglected ward in our city. There's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of things we can do about it. We need to make sure we have someone on that dais that doesn't just wait for opportunities to come to them, but they go out there and find them, they go out there and make things happen. I'm the most experienced candidate, I can do that.
I didn't know you had already run for city council. So I agree with Mr. Puerta that our ward is one of the most neglected, and I aim to change that. I'm running because I live here, and I know and I experience all of the challenges that our families and local businesses go through in this area. It's important to me that someone who's local here, that knows the area, that lives here, be on city council so that they can represent the individuals in this area. My campaign is rooted in community advocacy, education, transparency, and accountability. But most importantly, standing up for working families. Our residents deserve leadership that is transparent and consistent. Thank you.
Thank you, both gentlemen. Thanks very much. I thought it was a very informative forum. And I think you've got two really good candidates here. It could be a hard choice.